Hello, good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, everyone. So thank you so much. Today we have got an interesting panel. Continuing from what the sessions that we had in the morning, now we are talking about the next gen digital public infrastructure. What are the next generation digital public infrastructure, and how and what kind of progress do we can we foresee in the maybe over the next decade, building upon the great progress that has Indian digital public infrastructure achieved in the last decade. So starting from the session, maybe I can introduce. I can I can ask my first question from Kanwaljit. Can you give an overview of what the next generation digital public infrastructure going to be, and how they are going to be connected from the digital public infrastructure of last decade?
Thank you very much. So I wanted to begin by reframing the question from a technology view to a people view. So what we saw in the last decade was remarkable progress in DPI related to identity, where people can prove who they are with ease at low cost, and we have seen the remarkable benefits of that. We have seen many more people come into the banking system. We have seen many more women open accounts and gender gaps being eliminated. We have seen opening up of credit markets. We have seen an ease of living, where people are now holding their documents as digitally verifiable credentials and wallets. So if we look at the next generation digital infrastructure that is coming globally, the question really to ask is, how inclusive is it going to be? How are we going to design these solutions so that they work for everyone? So I work in the Gates Foundation, where we focus on our interventions on three fundamental principles. One, inclusion. We want to make sure that the people who are left behind don't get more left behind when technology comes forward. Second, equity. That people who use next generation DPI are able to benefit from it just like people who have the resources who use the current DPI. And third one is agency. It is about us or people having the choice of engaging with digital technologies in multiple ways. So, and we are seeing this all over the world. We had a brief discussion this morning about the payments DPIs. But do you know that in Europe, there is a current regulation which says that by December of 2026, every European country must issue a wallet, and every European government must issue an ID into that wallet. And by December of 2027, public and private businesses are required to accept it and issue documents in it. And what we are seeing is the spark that started in India with DPI at scale is now a global phenomenon. We are seeing this in Africa, we are seeing this in Latin America, we are seeing this in Southeast Asia, of course, Eastern Pacific. So this is really a global movement, but I think focusing less on the technology, I would focus more on the use cases. And I just want to mention an interesting anecdote. Yesterday when I checked into the hotel, I was asked, you booked a corporate rate. Can you prove that you work for the Gates Foundation? And I was like, how do I do that? And they're like, don't you have an ID or something? I said, I didn't bring one. They said, do you have a visiting card? I said, okay. I gave the visiting card and that was it. Now think about it. This is the world of low trust and high cost, because it didn't solve the purpose anyway. I hand out my visiting card to everybody, right? What we need to move to is a world of low cost and high trust.
Absolutely, very interesting spin to the question that technology is just an enabler. More important point is that how does it solve for people? How does it solve for inclusion? Continuing that, Harmeet, from your perspective, from an operator perspective, if we have to solve for inclusion, if we have to solve for high trust, if we have to solve for development, how do we leverage digital public infrastructure and what kind of shift are you seeing in digital public infrastructure as we move forward? Because in the last decade, we made huge progress in terms of digital payments. We made huge progress in terms of digital identity. Now, with the AI pervading and AI taking over practically all aspects of life, how is AI going to enable or demand a change in digital public infrastructure?
I think it's like Kamalji said, how we can leverage this digital infrastructure globally. Okay, so what is actually required and who are the main benefits for this? Okay, and how we can build this global infrastructure? We need lot of participation, lot of integration. Okay, and this time, like, we have other challenges also when we work globally. Like, there are regulation requirement is there for specific countries. Okay, how we can operate between different countries, and then technology issues are also there, how we can manage. But again, like, AI will play a big role here. Okay, like micro AIs, they can help in solving these issues, and as well as how we can pass on the benefit to the big user and the users who are left behind, and which can be benefit from this upcoming new next gen AI, I can say.
Great. Talking about the next gen AI, and a question to you, Ravi, that earlier we used to say that if you have to develop a region, develop a particular part of the country, you construct road, you construct ports, and then suddenly the development happens. In last decade in India, we saw it firsthand that when people got access to digital payments, they started getting access to digital credit, and as a result of which development happens. So when people, so obviously these digital infrastructure or digital public infrastructure has become a kind of national infrastructure. Now, moving on from what they have been able to achieve in a particular country, how do you see the interconnection happening beyond the borders? How do you see these DPIs of one country connecting with DPIs of another country, and what kind of challenges do you foresee in that?
Yeah, thanks. For my point of view, digital public infrastructure is more about basically of the networks, right? Which include your mobiles, your internet, right? That is already in place, right? If you talk about connection between different countries, how the system can be interoperable, right? If we saw, like we were discussing earlier, a lot of people were discussing this, we really focus that, right? As India, we created UPI, which is more like a public infrastructure where lots of people are using. Of course, any kind of infrastructure we put up, the most important part is the basically the policies, the security, and the government. And the technology comes into the picture at all other lines, right? So we saw the same kind of a thing, like where India is there, we leverage almost now 20 countries, right? The lots of functions also started happening in different countries. The next big thing is basically about now different countries are trying to reduce the cost. Because if you talk about like most of the diaspora of India peoples are in different countries, right? There's a cost and people transfer money from different countries to their home country, right? So that now the people are working towards more reducing this cost and reducing this expenditure, right? There is a new thing which is coming up in some of the countries. Central bank has already started testing it out, which is CBDC, right? We saw, right, like in UAE, there was like a small pilot and not testing it anymore. India didn't already launched it. So now everyone is working towards CBDC to basically how to use the cost in terms of transactions.
Thank you, Ravi. Coming to Kanwaljit, you. For DPI to be successful, there are multiple elements that need to come together at the same time. There needs to be public, and there needs to be innovation from the private players. There needs to be an enabling environment from the governments and the regulators. So there needs to be that policy assistance or policy nudge for something to become successful. There needs to be capital available, and then there has to be a public wide adoption of the infrastructure for it to become successful. If you have to talk from a policy perspective, that how policymakers are thinking about taking the journey of last decade forward in the next decade, what will be your remarks on that?
I think, quite simply put, the paradigm is going to shift fundamentally. I think what has happened in the last 10-15 years is that technology came first and policy and regulation came second. And because, to be honest, policymakers went to policy school, not technology school. So it takes a bit of time for them to understand what the implications of the technology are. That takes a bit of time to catch up. I think what is now happening is that the policymakers are very well aware of the strategic implications of those technology choices. You asked the question about AI. With AI, the bigger question now becomes things about, is it fair? Is it ethical? Is it transparent? Can you even figure out how it is making those decisions? And so the policymakers are very well aware of it. In India, there's a remarkable development recently where, did you know that Aadhaar authentication by facial recognition was launched in 2021? Today, 5 years later, it has crossed 2.5 billion authentications. And that number is not very impressive given India's size. But you must realize that this number has grown by a factor of 5 in the last 1 year. And it is now averaging 200 million authentications monthly. That is technology. Now, how do you use the technology for good? Now, imagine if in a payments ecosystem for high value transactions, you require a facial authentication with liveness check. How much will it impact fraud? It is, some studies indicate the fraud can be reduced by up to 80% if that technology is enabled. But at the same time, there's a risk. Facial recognition can also be used for bad things, for surveillance, for nefarious designs. So I think what is now going to happen is that there's a catch-up between policy and technology happening, where policy may make some good decisions, but it may make some bad decisions also. It may end up thwarting innovation. So I think this is a very central global debate which is playing out everywhere. So Europe has a very different view of AI regulation. US has a very different view of AI regulation. India has a very different view of AI regulation. And I think we are going to see all models play out, and we are going to see the impact of these choices. And ultimately, I think the value delivered for people is going to win.
Very interesting. And it is not just about policy and innovators catching up with each other, but it is also, I think, somewhere about the boundaries also. For example, in India, say NPCI or the regulator or government, they created payment rails. Can they become excited and start creating payment apps also? Because technically they can, technology is available. But where is that line that how policy lets private innovators take forward their vision? Coming to you, from the perspective of the new digital public infrastructure that is emerging and the new technologies becoming available, how do we ensure that the challenges around inclusion, challenges around public, large scale public participation that remain, at the same time we are able to leverage the technology? Because many times it happens that if something in the past was successful, there is a tendency that we tend to hold on to that thing. So how are companies looking at it, that they are adopting new technologies, at the same time they ensure that the larger intended benefit of inclusion, public service remain?
So if you see, like currently in India, this digital infrastructure, okay, so we have already reached one level of success. Okay, so next level will be like how we can ensure like the majority of benefit go to the public. Okay, so there are other things which we can use from the public infrastructure, which can be next gen public infrastructure, I can say. So we have all the data, like you see UPI is being a success, UIDA being a success. How we can leverage these data and we can pass on the benefits to the public using this data and AI. Okay, so it is all building the trust, how we can build the trust and people can accept. So trust cannot be built over time, overnight, I can say. Okay, so even like when UPI was launched, even like UPI also faced lot of challenges in the acceptance when it was launched, even UIDA also. Okay, so it is again like when we do any kind of transaction, and we follow any process, so we can build some at one level of trust with the public. So that is where like we can pass on the benefits, okay, to the general public, and how we can use this data to give more benefits and using the whatever investment we made in the public infrastructure. Yeah.
Okay. Ravi, talking about the company from where I come, I've been in this company for quite some time. We started in India and now we have started going to other countries. But one similarity, as much as we expect that developing countries will be different from developed countries and countries may vary from each other a lot. But one thing that we have seen consistently is that small and medium businesses, they are underserved even in countries that may be financially very well developed. Small and medium businesses may not have access to various financial things, especially credit. How digital public infrastructure can help in enabling that access in countries like UAE. In India, it is already happening as we see.
I think you have to go for the extreme point of view. So, my company also in the same line, so we started from India and then we entered into mid market and now we are in South Europe and market. Right. So we are in a fintech company. Right. So I'm not like SME, right? So we basically for SME we do underwriting, you know, both from India point of view or from UAE point of view. The different models and the policies have been developed by the Central Bank of India, which is RBI. Right. So there right now lots of regulations which is happening in the on the Central Bank of UAE, where they have the guidelines, more like the payment aggregations, they have basically different guidelines which is more related to services as well. Coming on to the SME, right, this if you want to relate this is what people from different countries come in and set up their shops, right, to pay licenses. So every and there is a risk, you see. The risk is what the people who are coming there, their background history is not there, their global was there. Right. That's why the integration will be basically the user identity is required in different countries where you can identify right different particulars of the particular user or business. Right. And accordingly you can start setting up your own underwriting model at a country level, which you can leverage right to the banking system or get access to different not only the banking players, the fintech players, and the non-fintech players, whosoever is going to the lending space, and accordingly you can leverage the lending thing for these businesses.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, we just have last 2 minutes. Kanwaljit, any closing remarks from your side?
Yeah, I just wanted to piggyback on Ravi's great steer, because I think one thing that Ravi mentioned was when you are dealing with a new entity, we don't know the background. And I think the next generation DPI can enable that in a very, very low cost way. Because let's say UAE has such a huge Indian diaspora. If an employer here wants to hire a nurse, how do they verify this person went to an actual nursing school and passed out? You want to hire an engineer, how do you know their credentials match up? What is the financial history of this person? And I think as we move forward, the integrations for that kind of data sharing. So this is the one DPI that we haven't talked about. We talked about identity and payments. We haven't talked about data sharing. I think the model of decentralized data sharing, Siddharth briefly mentioned it in the previous talk, with verifiable credentials and trusted mechanisms of sharing with wallets or maybe even cloud wallets, right? Whether it's held by the user or in the cloud doesn't really matter. But I think that can bring a lot of ease for people, where you don't have to run around proving things which cost a lot to prove, but in the end, they can all be faked in. So I think increasing that level of trust will be very key for small businesses to succeed, because they cannot spend all the resources in figuring out and doing the checks and balances that need to be done to increase the trust in this equation. So highest trust at lowest cost. How do we do that?
Yeah. And trust is one of the core tenet of DPI to be successful. Harmeet, last closing remarks from your side?
Yeah, again, adding to Kanwaljit, since there are a lot of migrants from India working here, how we can give this benefit to these workers. Okay, so as of now, they are more dependent on cash agents, how we can leverage these digital infrastructure, they can pass on the money with very low cost. Okay, so not only migrant workers, I can say even the tourists also, Indian tourists and all, how they can also benefited from this digital infrastructure. Yeah.
Maybe last closing remarks from your side, especially based on your experience of being in some of the GCC countries, and maybe you can connect that to the sector that you work operate in, which is the small and medium businesses. Yeah.
So I think almost the same said, right? The most important part is the data trading. In fact, to data trading, very closeness of the business and the language part. That is very important. And AI is one of the layer where you can start with underwriting or machine learning algorithms, right? Where you can talk about the social profile of a person, the business, right? All these areas are going to give you the complete profile of the person as well as the business. And then accordingly, you can talk about leveraging the data sharing for different countries to leverage the overall ecosystem of trust as well as the public with the rest of the
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, audience, for giving us a patient hearing. Thanks to all the panelists. It was a very insightful, very interesting session.